The forbidden Book of Enoch. The shocking truth about fallen angels and giants. There are secrets as old as the earth itself, whispered in forgotten corners of history, sometimes silenced for centuries, but never entirely erased. One such mystery lies not within the canonical pages of Scripture most know, but in a text that dared to describe a time before the Great Flood, when the line between the divine and the terrestrial was dangerously thin. We are talking about the enigmatic Book of Enoch, an apocryphal work that, despite not being part of the main canon of many Christian and Jewish traditions, had a profound and undeniable influence on ancient beliefs and still sends shivers down the spine with its disturbing revelations today. It takes us to an era where heaven and earth met in a way that altered humanity's destiny forever. The Book of Enoch begins with an audacious premise. Even before the great catastrophe that would purify the world with waters, there was a celestial transgression of epic proportions. It wasn't the sin of Adam and Eve that initiated the corruption of Eden, but a rebellion in much higher spheres. Enoch, a man whom the Bible itself mentions, walked with God and did not experience conventional death but was taken by him, is presented as the privileged seer who witnessed the fall of the Watchers. A group of angels who, seduced by the beauty of the daughters of men, descended from the heavens to fulfill their own carnal desires. This audacious narrative offers a new layer of understanding for obscure passages in Genesis, like the one that mentions, "The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took as wives whomsoever they chose." Enoch's text does not hesitate to deepen the celestial betrayal. Led by Semyaza, 200 watchers made a solemn pact on the summit of Mount Hermon, swearing to consummate their desires, no matter the cost. They came to earth not as divine messengers, but as usurpers, bringing with them not only sexual sin, but also forbidden knowledge. These fallen angels not only mingled with humanity, but also taught men arts and sciences that should not have been known so early. Metallurgy to forge weapons of war, the art of adorning themselves with cosmetics and jewelry, magic astrology, and the preparation of medicinal herbs and enchantments. These revelations, meant to be discovered organically by humanity over ages, were delivered prematurely and with nefarious purposes. The result was an accelerated corruption of civilization, a cosmic imbalance that reverberated throughout creation. How many times in our own history has knowledge and power been used not to uplift, but to corrupt? The story of the Watchers forces us to consider the responsibility that comes with possessing any kind of wisdom, be it divine or earthly. The Book of Enoch suggests that human depravity before the flood was not merely an inherent moral failing, but also a direct consequence of the interference and teaching of beings who came from a higher sphere, breaking a sacred covenant and introducing a form of evil that humanity was not yet prepared to face. The shocking truth revealed by Enoch is that the root of much of our suffering may lie in an ancient rebellion, long before we imagine. With the descent of the Watchers and the daughters of men, a new and terrible race was born on earth, the Nephilim, the giants. The Book of Enoch describes them as beings of colossal proportions, whose hunger and thirst were insatiable. They not only consumed everything humanity produced, but when resources began to dwindle, they turned against men themselves, devouring them. This was not just a matter of physical size, but of a deeply corrupted nature, a profane hybrid that belonged to neither sphere of creation and brought with it unprecedented violence and cruelty. The Nephilim, or those who fell as their Hebrew name suggests, were the pinnacle of the depravity that had spread. They were tyrants, conquerors, and cannibals, transforming the pre-Diluvian world into a scene of horror and oppression. Their existence represented the complete distortion of divine order, a living and monstrous reminder of their celestial parents' transgression. The cry of oppressed humanity and of the planet itself, defiled by so much bloodshed and injustice, rose to the heavens. The earth groaned under the weight of anarchy and perversion. Enoch reveals that injustice did not go unnoticed in the celestial realms. The archangels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, witnessing the chaos and misery, heard the lament of men and the anguish of the earth. They brought their pleas to the divine throne, asking for intervention against the wickedness of the Watchers and their offspring. The narrative here is crucial, as it humanizes the divine perspective, showing active concern and a response to the suffering of creatures. Was divine patience infinite in the face of such depravity? It was at this point that the divine decision was made. God, who in Genesis regretted that he had made man on the earth, in the Book of Enoch, sees the corruption not only of man, but also of the celestial beings who contaminated the human lineage and creation itself. The fallen angels, the Watchers, would be judged and imprisoned in abysses of darkness, awaiting a final judgment. Their children, the Nephilim, would be exterminated, and their spirits, having no bodies to return to, would become demons, haunting the earth. Divine intervention would not only be retribution, but a radical purification. The flood, which the Bible describes as a cleansing of human wickedness, acquires an even deeper dimension in the Book of Enoch. The removal of the abomination generated by the unholy union between the celestial and the terrestrial. It was not just human sin, but the very structure of existence that needed to be restored. The story of the Nephilim is a grim reminder of the consequences of disobedience and the mixing of the profane with the sacred. It forces us to question the limits of divine intervention and the depth of corruption that can arise when creatures transcend their designated roles. The preparation for the flood was not merely a punishment, but a desperate attempt to preserve the purity of the human lineage and the sanctity of creation, which had been so severely compromised by the Watchers and their descendants. With the coming of the flood, the world was purified of a deep corruption, perhaps much more complex than just the wickedness of human hearts. The Book of Enoch offers us this expanded perspective, where the global catastrophe was not only a judgment on humanity, but also the eradication of the Watchers' offspring, the Nephilim giants, and the imprisonment of the fallen angels themselves in prisons of darkness until the day of final judgment. The disembodied spirits of these giants, according to Enoch, would roam the earth as demons, perpetuating evil in other forms, a seed of disturbance that would manifest throughout human history. But why was a text with such depth and such revelations about the origin of evil and celestial intervention eventually marginalized? For centuries, the Book of Enoch was read and revered by many early Jewish and Christian communities. Excerpts from it are quoted in the Epistle of Jude in the New Testament, and its influence is clear in other biblical and apocryphal texts. However, for complex reasons which include the rise of other texts and the need for standardization of the biblical canon, it was gradually excluded from most sacred collections. It became the forbidden book, an echo of a forgotten time, preserved only in isolated pockets such as in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Despite its exclusion, Enoch's message resonates. It reminds us that the struggle against evil is not only an internal battle, but also a cosmic one, transcending purely human understanding. The story of the Watchers and the Nephilim forces us to contemplate the complexity of the divine plan, the existence of celestial beings with free will, and the devastating consequences of disobedience in all spheres. The final lesson of the Book of Enoch, despite its shocking narratives, is that divine justice always prevails, even if the path to it is long and mysterious. The story invites us to a deeper reflection on the origin of evil, the responsibility of free will, both human and angelic, and the certainty that a greater plan is unfolding. It challenges us to look beyond the obvious, to question what we have been taught, and to seek truths that may be hidden in the shadows of history. True faith does not cling only to what is easy or comprehensible, but expands to embrace the vastness of divine mysteries, even those that have been relegated to oblivion. Enoch's story reminds us that faith is not overcome by death, and that hope in God always finds a way, even in the deepest darkness and the oldest secrets. If this story has touched your heart and sparked your curiosity about the mysteries of the Scriptures and beyond, leave your comment below, sharing your reflections, and don't forget to share this video with friends and family who are also seeking answers. Give it a like to help us reach more people. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our next inspiring narratives.